On this week's Prequel episode, we follow up on our Warm Bodies listener polls and preview Malcolm X. Hello and welcome back to This Film Is Lit, the podcast where we talk about movies that are based on books. It's another prequel week, plenty to talk about. Let's jump right in to our patron shoutouts.
I put up with you because your father and mother were our finest patrons, that's why.
One new kind of patron this week, a free patron, which you can do. You can join at the free tier. You don't get a whole lot from it, but you can do it. And that free patron is Just Another Patron. So there you go. Thank you, Just Another Patron. Appreciate you following us over there. And as always, we have our Academy Award-winning patrons, and they are Amanda, Nicole Goebel, Harpo Rat, Nathan, Vic Blofeld, Matilde, Cottonwood Steve, Ben Wilcox, Teresa Schwartz, Ian from Wine Country, Kelly Napier, Gratch, Just Gratch, Shelby will return in Avengers Doomsday, and That Darn Skag. Thank you all for continuing to support This Film Is Lit. Katie, let's see what the people had to say about Warm Bodies.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
On Patreon, we had 1 vote for the book and 2 for the movie. Kelly Napier said, I feel like I usually agree with Katie, and I was thinking about voting for the book over the movie, but I just couldn't. The book felt too much like the result of a creative writing class where the prompt was to envision a modern take on Romeo and Juliet. A lot of the things in the book felt forced into the concept, including R's wife, who was obviously a stand-in for Rosalind, the girl Romeo was supposed to marry in Romeo and Juliet. The author thrusts her in, making us assume she'll be the love interest, only to immediately move on when something better comes along. I also couldn't get over the plot point in the book where Julie and Nora introduce R to Julie's dad as Archie, who is visiting from another human enclave. So you're telling me that it's so dangerous outside of your bubble that you have to have weapons training and deploy an entire platoon of people in order to travel, and we're expected to believe that her military-trained dad would just believe this guy just wandered over from his dome to theirs for a visit? Ridiculous.
I didn't read the book, so I can't comment on that. I will say, just hearing it described doesn't sound ridiculous to me. Of like, I could imagine in this universe, it's very dangerous to go out in the world because of zombies and stuff.
Right.
But that they still humans do occasionally venture from one compound to another. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I could believe that. But I didn't read the book, so I'm not.
So I totally agree with Kelly's first point. I do think that the book tried a little too hard to like wedge itself into the Romeo and Juliet concept.
I
think
totally,
that there were like elements that could have been dropped and it still would have been fine and it still would have read as a Romeo and Juliet inspired story.
Yeah, but it felt like the author was trying to make like everything work.
It kind of felt like the author was trying to do as close to like a 1-to-1 as he could get, and that was really just not necessary. The plot point with R meeting Julie's dad, I didn't really have a problem with, but I also, and maybe this was just like my interpretation of it, maybe there's no actual textual evidence for this, I read him as being suspicious, but like not saying anything initially.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm wrong. Kelly went on to say, I liked the changes the movie made, with the exclusion of the wife and kids being the best change they made. Although I could have done without the whitewashing of Nora's character. In that age range, I think Keke Palmer or Tessa Thompson would have killed that role. Yeah, they had plenty of options for that. Yeah. I thought it was fine that we spent less time with those people in the city who didn't really matter in the end, considering the catalyst for change rests squarely with R and Julie. I voted for the movie because it was just a fun 90-minute movie where the book felt like a class assignment I would have graded a C- if I were the teacher.
Dang. Harsh.
C-, that's not that bad. C is average. Our next comment was from Shelby, who said, I was culturally aware of Warm Bodies as a smarter, punchier Twilight, but this was my first time reading or watching. I appreciate Katie choosing something lighter. I appreciated that for myself, too. I thought the movie made a lot of smart cuts. I didn't care for much of the book's world building. On top of that, the movie's just more fun. I'm pretty sure that when Julie and R kiss in the book, it's implied they both become something new because their eyes turn gold. I'm sure fans who've read the sequel know what that's about. I'm honestly surprised they didn't adapt those. Did this movie not do well?
So I think we talked in the prequel. I think it did fairly well,
Yeah.
like relatively speaking. I don't know why there was not interest in doing a sequel, or at least I didn't even remember. I don't recall seeing anything on like the Wikipedia
I
about a
don't recall
sequel or
seeing
anything.
it. So here's my theory. I think the sequels to the book came out like years on down the line.
Hmm.
Like if I'm remembering right, I think the sequels came out in the like 2017, 2018
Okay.
range. I think. And I don't think even though this movie did well in the sense that it like made a profit, it didn't leave any like cultural impact
Yeah.
in my
True.
opinion.
I would agree with that. Yes.
So I can understand why they wouldn't be like, oh, we're gonna do sequels to this 5 years later.
Yeah, so just on a couple of notes. One, it made plenty of money. It was a $35 million budget. It made 117 million, which is not
Yeah.
like insane, but for that budget, that's it made money. Like it definitely,
Mhm.
even if you double the budget, sometimes what I think is what you're supposed to do when you take into like marketing and stuff. If you're trying to like gauge if it made money or not,
Yeah.
the budget doesn't necessarily include marketing, I don't think. So if you double it or whatever and say it was 70 million even, it still made like $40 million. So
Yeah.
it was still a success. But to your point, the sequel came out in 2017
Yeah, that's what I thought.
and it wasn't even announced till 2012. And then an ebook prequel came out in 2013. So yeah, the prequel came out the same year the movie did, but the sequel didn't come out till 4 years later. So at that point,
Yeah,
any momentum it had, which even then it made money, but again, like you said, I don't think it had any sort of real cultural staying power. Although I say that, who knows? I felt that way about Avatar, but it still makes $1 billion. And that's just
Avatar seems to be the exception to the rule for some reason. Also, I've obviously never read the sequel. Maybe it's weird and bad. It could be. It could be weird and bad.
Yeah. But yeah, I think what you're saying makes the most sense is that just the time between when the sequel came out and when the movie came out.
Yeah.
You're kind of out of the window. And you're very much on the back end of the fantasy romance.
Yeah, teen adaptation.
Young adult monster romance stuff was very much waning.
Yes.
Like it was all a punchline.
Definitely on its way out
by the time the sequel was published. So
all right. Our next comment was from Nathan, who said, I missed the poll. That's all right. I counted your vote anyway, because I've been behind on reading and watching, but I definitely have to go with the book. I thought it was really trying to do and say something much more interesting than the movie. I think the book fails a lot and honestly feels like it could have used an editor. That's exactly how I felt about the book. It failed a lot. It wasn't amazing, but it was trying to do something that I found super interesting. Mistakes like General Grigio's just blind acceptance of Archie are without any proof of who he was, or are wandering away from the front gate as if they wouldn't notice or have some way of holding him while they dealt with the zombies. It also has R and Julie leave the city just to immediately come back, and there has to be a more plot-efficient way to handle that. All that being said, I think the message of conservatism as a world-ending plague is quite interesting. I like to think some reactionary right-wing talk show host was patient zero. They were just consumed by their fear and hatred.
Mm-hmm.
The movie is fine, and I think it does a decent job of cutting out some unnecessary parts of the book and streamlining things, but the outcome is just kind of okay and not anything interesting. I definitely got the sense that M was similar in human age to R, so I was surprised to see Rob Corddry playing him.
I also was surprised to see Rob Corddry playing that character. It just seemed like a strange choice to me. Just kind of like this.
I don't have any opinions on that actor, so it didn't seem all that strange to me.
He's not in a ton of stuff. Like the thing he was most known for, at least to me, is that he was a correspondent on The Daily Show forever. And he also did act. Like he was in, he's been in stuff, but he was mostly in like comedy, like this is a comedy.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's not like he's a big name pull or anything like that.
Right.
And it just seemed like a particularly strange choice especially because he's playing Mercutio, who is in the story is like the same age as Romeo, right? Like,
yeah.
Are they not like they're like friend? They're similarly aged friends, correct?
I think so.
Yeah. And so I agree. I felt it was a little strange for him to be like this middle-aged man. But I thought it worked fine in the story. Like in the movie, I thought his character was fine in the movie. It just was a little surprising to me that I was like, why Rob Corddry?
I didn't read him as similar to age in R because in the book, no. And so the book is purposefully very vague about R's age. And like it says several times throughout the book that he has one of those faces that like he could be in his late teens or he could be in his mid 20s or he could even be in like his early 30s even.
Yeah.
But then I'm pretty sure that M is described as balding.
Oh, okay.
I think. Right. I could be misremembering that.
But if so, that might be why they picked Rob Corddry.
Yeah.
They needed a balding actor because they're pretty sure he's balding in the movie. But yeah, I did think it was just an interesting... It's just just not a choice I would expect for that role in this movie. I don't know why. I'm trying to think of what the heck he had done that they were like, we need Rob Corddry for this, and I don't know what that would have been.
I have no
other
idea.
than like some of his bits on The Daily Show. I'm trying to think like what else he was in.
Maybe he did a zombie bit that you don't remember.
It's very possible. It's very possible. Again, it's not that he hasn't been in other stuff. Like maybe it was just because. So was this right off the heels of? The only thing I could think is that he was pretty. This might have been off the heels of Hot Tub Time Machine. It is that I could see because like he was also in Megamind. He was a voice in Megamind. Metro City Citizen. It's an uncredited cameo. So, but he's one of the main characters in Hot Tub Time Machine, which came out in 2010 and was a pretty big success. So I could imagine that being.
He got signed on this based on.
Yeah, I mean, he was in Old School. He was in Failure to Launch. I Now Pronounce You Chuck and Larry, Blades of Glory, Semi Pro. He's in movies. It's just, again, he's not like he's usually like a supporting actor in those movies. And again, he's a supporting actor in this, I guess. But I don't know. It just felt like a strange choice pairing with him with Nicholas Hoult, who's significantly younger than him, I think. So, anyways.
All right. Over on Facebook, we had one vote for the book and one for the movie. Austin said Nicholas Hoult being awkward and adorable makes the movie the winner for me.
Fair.
And Kat said, at the risk of missing my window again, I'll comment now and return later if I make it in time. I have not reread or rewatched the movie, but from memory alone, I'll say the book. I remember the movie being a lot of fun, but thoroughly appreciating the book's focus on what makes us human and what it means to live.
That's pretty much what you said.
We didn't have any comments on Instagram, but we had 3 votes for the book, 1 for the movie, and 1 listener who couldn't decide. On Threads, we had 0 votes for the book and 1 for the movie. And Gumby OK 234 said, I didn't read the book yet. It's on top of my TBR pile, but the week caught up with me too fast. I still think the movie was Romeo and Juliet with zombies. You're correct on that.
That's what
Gumby.
it is.
That's also what it is in the book.
Yes, that's what the book is doing.
I agree that the M character development, both as a zombie to human and as a whole, was too uneven. Rob Corddry feels like the same character no matter what he is cast in.
I will say that he does feel, which I guess I can understand that, is that for the put upon kind of pathetic middle-aged guy who's just going through the motions, Rob Corddry was that guy in movies at this time period. It's like, I think that's the premise of like Hot Tub Time Machine is like, it's a bunch of like middle-aged guys like ruining the fact that their lives didn't turn out the way they wanted or something like that. I've never actually seen it, but he very much plays the like put upon kind of loser who like whose life isn't working out the way he wants. And then, so I guess I can understand it from that regard of why they would think like, yeah, he would be good at this. Cause that's kind of what M is doing in the movie.
Yeah. All right. Over on Goodreads, we had 1 vote for the book, 0 for the movie. And Miko said, both the book and the movie were fine, but I hoped for something that would use the premise a bit more cleverly. The clearer distinction in the book that we are talking about fantasy cursed zombies and not science fiction virus zombies helped, and I wish there would have been even a throwaway line about it in the movie.
I think, to be fair, I think in the movie we're supposed to assume it's more of virus infection.
Yes.
I think they were scared of going too far away from traditional zombie lore, as evidenced by in the last prequel I talked about how even with what they did in this movie, the director had that blurb about like, please,
that we thought was kind of strange.
Yes, where he was like, hey, I like, we think that people who like zombie stuff will be into this if they like come in with an open mind and like, you know, we make some changes to your traditional zombie lore, but you know, it's still like very much like couching and like trying to like appeal, because again, you remember this is coming out kind of at the height of zombie, like with The Walking Dead being
right. Yes,
which I assume is another reason this movie got made, was The Walking Dead was kind of at the peak of its popularity around this time, I think. Pretty sure. Trying to remember when did
we watched The Walking Dead up until like 2015 or 2016.
Yeah.
And then we just one day we turned an episode off and we never turned it back on.
Yeah. It was so this was like Walking Dead started in 2010, the TV show. So this is like 2 years, like we're right in the height of when The Walking Dead is the most popular show on television. Zombieland came out probably like 2010, 2011, 2012, if I had to guess. So we were like in the peak of that kind of like mid 2000s zombie resurgence, 2009 for Zombieland. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting that quote from the director, because like having read the book, I feel like I understand why he said that, because the book does deviate a lot from traditional zombie lore, but I didn't really feel like the movie did.
I think the big thing in the movie really is obviously the like that they can be cured would be a big thing. But the other thing is I think that's kind of strange that is like people would be like, what's going on here, is like the whole bonies thing. Like that there's this extra like layer of zombie that is again, but I agree, because apart from that, it feels like a pretty traditional zombie thing of like they eat brains, you kill them by destroying their brain, and that's about it. And
then it shuffle
seems to be
around
like a virus,
and
it seems to be like some sort of like virus infection thing or whatever. Yeah.
Miko went on to say, I agree that the zombies became way too human way too quickly. I had the same problem with both the book and the movie, but I think the movie feels worse with the added visual element that isn't really utilized to its full potential. So much of the spoken zombie dialogue could have been replaced with a grunt and a gesture.
I could not agree more. That was one of my, and I'm glad you vocalized it that way, because that was, I think, my biggest issue with the early parts of the movie. It felt like so much of what Nicholas Hoult specifically in their early part of their relationship should have been doing was gesturing and grunting and stuff, as opposed to saying like two completely normal English words. Yeah. Like that was where it felt like, okay, well, we was talking about the episode where it felt like he went from like a 1 to like a 5 out of 10, like immediately. It felt like there was that like there could have been that period where he's more of like gesturing and physically using the environment or doing the thing with like the record player and stuff that you were talking about to communicate, as opposed to just immediately being like able to say like, no, don't, like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I mean, I would have even liked to go through a point where we see him like really trying to squeeze words out.
That's what
Miko ended his comment with, the book is better.
There you go.
So our winner this week was actually the book by a hair, with 6 votes to the movie's 5, plus our one listener who couldn't decide.
All right. Sweet. Thank you all for all of your feedback. We really appreciate it. Don't learn anything in the segment this week because both of our book and movie facts are pretty extensive this week. So we're going to get into it and learn a little bit about the autobiography of Malcolm X.
Do you know where you came from? What's your name?
Malcolm Little.
No. That's the name of the slave masters who own your family. You don't even know who you are. Who are you?
Say Roseland. Roseland.
He was a pusher, a hustler, a thief.
You ready to tackle the streets? Yeah, I'm ready. Let them come.
The autobiography of Malcolm X is an autobiography written by Black American activist Malcolm X in collaboration with American journalist Alex Haley. And Haley co-authored the book based on a series of in-depth interviews that he conducted with Malcolm X between 1963 and 1965. The book was released posthumously on October 29th, 1965, 9 months after Malcolm X was assassinated.
Wow. Yeah, right after.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to hear, I'm sure this information is out there, but I'd be interested to see like how that the writing of this worked. Like, because when you hear, the autobiography of Malcolm X, you're like, well, he just wrote it himself, right? That's what you would assume. But then finding out like, because I when I was doing my research, saw that a journalist worked on it with him. And I was like, I wonder like,
so
what is Malcolm X writing? What is the journalist writing? You know what I mean? Like,
it sounded to me as I was like perusing and reading about it. It sounds to me like Alex Haley did most of the actual writing, like kind of in a ghostwriter capacity, based on the interviews that he conducted with Malcolm X. But then there were also like obviously some like back and forth and like giving of notes and that type of thing.
And probably I would imagine also that there's quite a fair amount of it was probably also excerpts of Malcolm X's writing. I assume would be maybe in the, I don't know, but potentially, because obviously Malcolm X wrote a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And so that stuff would make it into the, I don't know, I guess that's a different thing. But anyways, I was just curious because that's an interesting, I don't know. I've never heard of an autobiography written by another person. You know what I mean? Like, so
so the autobiography is a spiritual conversion narrative that outlines Malcolm X's philosophies of Black pride, Black nationalism, and Pan-Africanism. So boiled down to basics, what this means is that the narrative follows like a general outline of how his beliefs evolved over the years.
That is what the movie follows. So.
Yeah.
For my memory.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So there has been some scholarly debate since the book's publication over how to interpret Alex Haley's role in its creation. So like I said, he was a journalist and a writer. You might recognize another of his well-known works, Roots, the saga of an American family.
It's funny, I didn't realize that was him, but when I Googled Alex Haley and looked at him, I was like, I've seen this guy. I recognize this man.
So, while Malcolm X himself and scholars who were contemporary to the autobiography's publication regarded Haley as its ghostwriter, modern scholars tend to regard him more as like a collaborator. So, Haley did do work to minimize his own authorial voice within the text, but he also was influential on the stylistic choices. So, for example, Malcolm X left the Nation of Islam during the period when he was working on the book with Haley. And rather than rewriting the earlier chapters to reflect this change, which apparently was something he initially wanted to do.
Malcolm X?
Yeah. Haley instead persuaded him to make it kind of like a suspense and drama thing. Additionally, according to biographer Manning Marable, I hope I'm pronouncing his last name right, quote, Haley was particularly worried about what he viewed as Malcolm X's anti-Semitism and rewrote material to eliminate it.
Yeah. There's obviously, because that's a whole thing, especially with Nation of Islam, from my understanding. Like, there's a whole other thing there. So, yeah.
So Marable's belief is that the resulting text was stylistically and ideologically distinct from what he thinks Malcolm X would have written without Haley's influence.
That seems likely.
Yeah. And also that it differs from what may have actually been said in the interviews between Haley and Malcolm X.
Yeah. Because I assume there weren't like recordings of these interviews. He was like,
I don't believe so.
he was
Yeah.
writing notes or whatever.
Yeah.
Or
I didn't see anything about there being recordings.
Yeah.
Interestingly, though, in 1992, attorney Gregory Reed bought the original manuscript of the autobiography at the sale of the Haley estate, and those manuscripts included 3 missing chapters, which were omitted from the original text. And I did not see anything about those chapters being included in later editions, so I'm not sure if they're available anywhere to read or not. One of them was acquired by the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture in 2018, but it sounds like the others must still be privately owned.
Huh. Yeah, I hadn't heard about that. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. I thought that was interesting. When the autobiography was published, the New York Times reviewer Elliot Fremont Smith described it as a, quote, brilliant, painful, important book. In 1967, historian John William Ward wrote that it would become a classic American autobiography. And the autobiography of Malcolm X has influenced generations of readers. In 1990, Charles Solomon wrote in the Los Angeles Times, quote, unlike many 60s icons, the autobiography of Malcolm X, with its double message of anger and love, remains an inspiring document. Cultural historian Howard Bruce Franklin describes it as, quote, one of the most influential books in late 20th century American culture. And in 1998, Times named the autobiography of Malcolm X as one of 10 required reading nonfiction books. Obviously, the autobiography was also incredibly influential within the Black arts movement. Writers and thinkers associated with the Black arts movement found in the autobiography an aesthetic embodiment of his profoundly influential qualities, namely, quote, the vibrancy of his public voice, the clarity of his analyses of oppression's hidden history and inner logic, the fearlessness of his oppression to white supremacy, the fearlessness of his opposition to white supremacy, and the unconstrained ardor of his advocacy for revolution by any means necessary.
Interesting. I was interested to hear, and I would be interested. Did you come across anything that you saw of criticisms of the book for its representation of Malcolm X or his life? I mean, obviously, there's the part we talked about a second ago of like people question how much was Haley, how much was Malcolm X, and that sort of thing. But because the big thing with the movie that we'll get into here in a second is there are some pretty strong criticisms of the film of sort of sanitizing Malcolm X's like kind of life story and all of that in order to make it very palatable to, like, you know, upper class white audiences and stuff like that.
Sure.
And or whatever. And so I was interested if any of that was also criticisms that were levied at the the book that you saw, or if it, in the translation adaptation is where that was introduced.
I don't recall seeing any criticism about that specifically.
Okay.
There are other criticisms of it. Mostly I think going back to the like authorial intent.
Yeah. Like how accurate is it to say yeah. I guess it's kind of a similar idea. We'll get into it when we get into my notes here in a second. But yeah, okay.
So, the autobiography of Malcolm X has sold well since its 1965 publication. According to the New York Times, the paperback edition sold 400,000 copies in 1967 and 800,000 copies the following year. The book experienced increased readership and returned to the bestseller list in the 1990s, obviously helped by the movie.
Yeah.
Between 1989 and 1992, sales of the book increased by 300%.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I actually, and I don't know if I included it in my notes, but I had heard that part of the thing that helped the movie get made ultimately was there was a spike in sales, maybe just from the we'll get into it. I might have a note about it later, but I think that spike in sales was not necessarily because of the movie, but that spike in sales helped the movie actually get made.
Aside from the 1992 film that we will be watching, Lawrence Fishburne narrated the book in what was Audible's first ever unabridged audiobook recording in 2020, which explains why I couldn't find an audiobook version of the text, because Audible has it.
Oh, okay. I was like, why couldn't you?
Thank you, Audible.
Gotcha. It's crazy that there wasn't one prior to that.
I know.
Seems interesting. All right, let's go ahead now and learn a little bit about Malcolm X, the film.
He was a follower who became a leader.
You're not an American. We didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us.
He brought honor to disobedience.
I suggest you look outside that window.
You've been laying down and bowing down for 400 years. I think it's time to stand up.
All right, break it up. You got what you wanted.
Nah, I'm not satisfied.
That's too much power for one man to have.
And a voice to a people who longed to be heard.
You've been hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray.
So I always just copy my notes from Wikipedia and just kind of read them to you guys, because for these prequel episodes, we don't do it's minimum amount of work, and I think it just creates fun conversation, allows us to kind of like learn a little bit about the but usually I try to find other stuff. This time, a lot of this I'm really going to read directly from Wikipedia, because there's a lot of nuance in this that I don't want to try to like summarize. So there's a lot to talk about here. So this is even more so a direct, you're about to catch the Wikipedia article for this movie. So Malcolm X is a 1992 film written and directed by Spike Lee, known for Do the Right Thing, She's Gotta Have It, School Days, Mo Better Blues, Jungle Fever, Crooklyn, Inside Man, and Black Klansman, among others. I included Black Klansman there because obviously we have done Black Klansman on the show. And it was also written by Arnold Pearl, who's known for writing the film adaptation of Fiddler on the Roof, and he was the creator of the TV show NYPD. Now, we'll get into it. He's on the credits here, but it's
right.
Way more,
I know there was some.
It's way more complicated than that. In fact, one of the people not on the credits is a very well-known person that I have a feeling was a lot more instrumental in the writing of this film, which we'll get to. So the film stars Denzel Washington, Angela Bassett, Albert Hall, Al Freeman Jr., Delroy Lindo, Spike Lee, Teresa Randall, Kate Vernon, Ernest Lee Thompson, Christopher Plummer, and Giancarlo Esposito, among quite a few others. It has an 89% on Rotten Tomatoes, a 73% on Metacritic, and a 7.7 out of 10 on IMDb. It was nominated for 2 Oscars, Best Actor in a Leading Role for Denzel, and Best Costume Design for Ruth E. Carter, who was the woman who did the costumes. It also won 4 Image Awards, which are the annual entertainment awards that the NAACP puts on. It won for Outstanding Actor in Motion Picture for Denzel, Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Motion Picture for Al Freeman Jr., Outstanding Supporting Actress for Angela Bassett, and Outstanding Motion Picture. And was nominated for one other that I can't recall at the moment. Which I included that because I was curious to see, because this is one of those, I read some other stuff. I was interested to see what like the cultural Black reaction to this film was at the time.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like I was curious to see if it was something that like Black culture was into, not into at the time that it came out. Obviously I was 4 years old. I have and a little white kid, so I had no idea. But I like I said, I included that specifically because I was kind of interested to see like, was this a well-regarded film in the broader Black community? And again, I'm very much shorthanding that by using the NAACP awards here, but it was kind of something I could use to kind of gauge that a little bit. The film was produced by Marvin Worth, and he acquired the rights to the autobiography of Malcolm X in 1967. So before they even came out, or the year it came out, I guess, basically. You say it came out in 67 or 69 or what?
I thought I said 65.
65?
Yeah.
Yes, so right after it came out. Worth had actually met Malcolm X, then going by the name Detroit Red, when he was a teenager selling drugs in New York City, according to Marvin Worth. Worth was 15 at the time and was spending time at jazz clubs in New York. And Worth remembers remembers of that time, quote, "He was selling grass. He was 16 or 17, but looked older. He was very witty, a funny guy, and he had this extraordinary charisma, a great dancer and a great dresser. He was very good looking, very, very tall. Girls always noticed him. He was quite a special guy," end quote. Which I just thought was funny that this random movie producer is like, yeah, I knew Malcolm X. But this dude went on this Alfred Marvin Worth was on a crusade to get this movie made for decades. Obviously, it came out in 92, and he started working on it in the 60s. So in 1968, Worth commissioned a screenplay, and he picked a good person for the screenplay from novelist James Baldwin, who was joined by Arnold Pearl, a screenwriter who had been a victim of McCarthy-era blacklisting. So part of the reason he was involved in this is, McCarthy wasn't a fan of. So he had some, left-leaning bona fides.
A little bit of street cred.
A little bit of street cred for getting blacklisted by McCarthy. That screenplay took a lot longer than expected, and Pearl ended up dying in 1971 before the film could ever be made. Baldwin would go on to develop his work on the screenplay into the book One Day When I Was Lost, a scenario based on Alex Haley's The Autobiography of Malcolm X. He would go on in 1976 to write of his experience, quote, I think that I would rather be horsewhipped or incarcerated in the forthright bedlam of Bellevue than repeat that adventure, end quote, of writing the screenplay.
Yeah.
Was not into it. Or it was a very tough experience, apparently. Every time I read anything, and I already knew that James Baldwin was obviously brilliant. We talked about him on the podcast and stuff before, but every time you read anything he ever wrote, you're like, holy fucking shit, this dude
That's so evocative.
Well, and like, not even that. There's other stuff I didn't include in here that I was reading from him, like talking about this movie and stuff. And it's just everything he writes, you're like, this man is the most brilliant man. It's crazy. It's like crazy. It's all like incredibly like evocative, and his prose is brilliant, but also just he so brilliantly like assesses and dissects the problems with society like over and over and over again, and did so in like the 60s, like in a way that is still as relevant as ever. It's wild. So several other authors would go on to attempt drafts for the film, including David Mamet, David Bradley, Charles Fuller, and Calder Willingham. None of those ended up going anywhere. Eventually, Spike Lee took on the role as director, and he would rewrite the Baldwin Pearl script from the 60s. Due to those revisions, the Baldwin estate asked that the producers take the Baldwin's name off the credits.
Fair.
So, yes, like I said, I would not be surprised if Baldwin still has a pretty big stamp on what this movie was, but there was enough changes made that his family and estate were like, that's not his work anymore. Yeah. Which we'll get into. There were some criticisms of the film that we'll get into that I could understand maybe why his estate wasn't as big on it. So I thought this was interesting. The production was controversial long before filming ever began. Obviously, one of the kind of crux of that controversy was that Malcolm X had denounced whites kind of broadly before he undertook his Hajj. So there was a lot of friction in getting this film made, because Malcolm X was not viewed in the same light in this time period as somebody like Martin Luther King Jr.
Right.
His image was very much one of, well, he was controversial. Yes. And this movie actually did a lot to kind of not rehabilitate's the right word, but to change perspective or perception of Malcolm X as a figure among white audiences, at least. I don't think it did a lot. I think Black audiences kind of knew what Malcolm X's deal was broadly, but I think for white audiences, this was definitely a movie that kind of changed perceptions of who Malcolm X was. But we'll get into whether or not how it changed it was necessarily a good thing. So Warner Brothers agreed to the project. They initially wanted Oscar-nominated Canadian film director Norman Jewison to direct the film. Jewison had directed the civil rights film In the Heat of the Night, which I've never actually seen, but a very famous civil rights movie called In the Heat of the Night from 1967. And because they signed him on, this is when Denzel agreed to join the project and play Malcolm X. Jewison and Washington had previously worked together in a film called A Soldier Story. I thought this was interesting. Jewison also offered Eddie Murphy the role of Alex Haley in this version of the film. So Alex Haley appears in the movie as a character. I don't remember who he's actually ultimately played for or by. But all of this goes down, and then a protest kind of erupted over the fact that they were just decided to have a white director make a film about Malcolm X. And Spike Lee was one of the main voices of that criticism. Since college, he had considered a film adaptation of the autobiography of Malcolm X to be a dream project. Lee and others felt that it would be more appropriate, or only appropriate, for a black person to direct the film. Lee later would apparently deny saying this. I don't know. This is just what Wikipedia says. I'm quoting it directly. I feel like he wouldn't have denied saying that, but I don't know. Whatever. I think maybe he would have said, he denied saying that only a black person should direct it, but
maybe.
he was very clearly vocally critical of the decision to have this guy direct the film. So after public outcry against Jewison, Worth, the producer, concluded, quote, "It needed a black director at this point. It was insurmountable the other way. There's a grave responsibility here," end quote. So he did at least, realize eventually. So soon thereafter, Spike Lee was named the director, and he subsequently edited the script, saying, quote, "I'm directing the movie and I rewrote the script, and I'm an artist and there's just no two ways about it. This film about Malcolm X is going to be my vision of Malcolm X. But it's not like I'm sitting atop a mountain saying, screw everyone, this is the Malcolm I see. I've done the research, I've talked to the people who were there," end quote. So, shortly after Spike Lee was announced as the director, and before the film was released, Malcolm X, the film, received criticism by black nationalists and members of the United Front to Preserve the Legacy of Malcolm X, headed by poet and playwright Amira Baraka, who were worried about Lee's portrayal of Malcolm X. There was a protest in Harlem that drew a couple hundred people kind of protesting the film. Some of these people, again, I am reading directly from Wikipedia here, trying to summarize this as best as possible. Some based their opinion on dislike of Lee's previous films. Others were concerned that he would focus on Malcolm X's life before he converted to Islam. Baraka bluntly accused, Amiri Baraka, that's the poet and playwright from earlier, bluntly accused Spike Lee of being, quote, a buppy, which for people don't know, that's essentially a black yuppie, saying, quote, "We will not let Malcolm X's life be trashed to make middle-class Negroes sleep easier," end quote, compelling others to write the director and warn him, quote, "not to mess up Malcolm's life," end quote. Some people, including Spike Lee himself, noted the irony that many of the arguments made against him were similar to arguments that were made against Jewison directing the film. And we'll get into some more criticisms of it here eventually, but a lot of the criticism that I think comes towards this film is from a place of like class consciousness and whether or not Spike Lee had the right perspective to direct this movie, because he, again, calling him a buppy, he was a kind of from my understanding, was a fairly well-to-do person who kind of existed in, I don't know. So anyways, there was a lot of controversy, even with Spike Lee making this movie, that it would not necessarily be an accurate telling of Malcolm X's life. There were also a ton of budget issues because Warner Brothers didn't want to give Lee the budget that he asked for. Ultimately, the budget got up to $33 million. Lee contributed 2/3 of his $3 million salary to the film. Denzel supposedly donated his entire salary to the film in order to try to keep production going. But eventually the film got shut down in post-production due to these budget conflicts. But the film was saved by the financial intervention of prominent black Americans, some of whom appear in the film. Here's a list of people that helped financially support this movie so that it actually could get across the finish line and get made. Bill Cosby, unfortunate first one there. Bill Cosby, Oprah Winfrey, Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Janet Jackson, Prince, Tracy Chapman, and Peggy Cooper Kaffritz, who is the founder of the Duke Ellington School of the Arts. So their contributions, they made them as donations, and as Lee noted, said, quote, "This is not a loan. They are not investing in the film. They are black folks with some money who came to the rescue of the movie. As a result, this film will be my version, not the Bond company's version, not Warner Brothers. I will do the film the way it ought to be, and it will be over 3 hours," end quote. So a month before the film was released, Spike Lee asked that media outlets send specifically black journalists to interview him about the film. And this request was also controversial. It was common, apparently, for celebrities to pick the interviewers who were known to be sympathetic to them, and ask for specific interviewers. But this was the first time in many years, according to Wikipedia here, in which race had been used as a qualification. And Lee clarified that he was not barring white interviewers from interviewing him, but that he said, given the subject matter of the film, that black writers have, quote, more insight about Malcolm than white writers, end quote. The request was turned down by the LA Times, but several others, including Premiere Magazine, Vogue, Interview, and Rolling Stone, agreed, including Premiere Magazine, Vogue, Interview, and Rolling Stone. And I thought this one's interesting. Premiere Magazine said that it actually made them reevaluate their staffing, and they ended up hiring a black writer and editor because of this request. They were like, why do we not have any black people working on our magazine? And they're like, oh shit. So yeah. Malcolm X's widow, Dr. Betty Shabazz, served as a consultant on the film, so she was at least involved in the process. I looked up how to pronounce her last name, and I watched a video of like a history video about like the history of Dr. Betty Shabazz, and there was 2 hosts in it, and they both pronounced it different. One of them said Shabazz, and the other one said Shabazz. And then I looked on like 5 different videos, and every single video it was different, Shabazz or Shabazz. So I went with Shabazz because that sounded closer to me. But anyways. So I actually didn't realize this. Denzel had already had experience playing Malcolm X when this film was being made, because he had starred in the play When the Chickens Come Home to Roost, which is a play that dealt with the relationship between Malcolm X and Elijah Muhammad, who is the leader of the Nation of Islam, and which is the person potentially accused of having him assassinated or being involved in the assassination. Malcolm X is the first non-documentary and the first American film to be given permission to film in Mecca. They had to use a second unit film crew in order to film in Mecca because non-Muslims, including Spike Lee himself, are not allowed inside the city. So they had to hire an all-Muslim second unit crew to film, but they were allowed to film in Mecca. There are some cameos in the movie, including Nelson Mandela, Christopher Plummer, Peter Boyle, William Kunstler, who is the attorney who defended the Chicago 7, Al Sharpton, and Bobby Seale, who is a co-founder of the Black Panther Party. You see Al Sharpton and Bobby Seale towards the beginning. There's a point where there's these like 3, I don't remember exactly. They're like activists or whatever, like on the street, like talking, like, like preaching or whatever. And it's Al Sharpton, Bobby Seale, and I think one other guy. But so director Spike Lee removed all mention of Louis Farrakhan from the film because he received very specific death threats or direct threats from Louis Farrakhan, who is, you can go look up Louis Farrakhan. He's not the greatest guy in the world from everything I have read. I thought this is kind of interesting and random. The film features 3 generations of Washingtons. Denzel, obviously, is in the film, but so is his son, John David, as well as his mother, Linus. Or Linus, probably. And John David, I'm like 99% sure John David Washington was a running back for the St. Louis Rams briefly when I used to watch them before they moved to LA. He was in the NFL, and I'm pretty sure I know one of his sons was, I think it was John David. Because the other one's an actor. One of them's an actor. Oh, no, John David's the actor. Sorry, it's one of his other sons I'm pretty sure. No, it was John David Washington. John David Washington was a football player, and he signed and played for the Rams in 2006. And then he went on to become an actor.
Good
and
for
was
him.
an actor as a kid, obviously, he was in this movie. But I knew one of his sons was a
You're
football
vindicated.
player. Yeah, I was like, I remember being like, oh, that's interesting. That one year when like the Rams had a running back that was Denzel Washington's son. I thought this is just kind of random and interesting. The names of the 3 assassins that were charged with Malcolm X's assassination are listed in the end credits for the film.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then getting to just a couple reviews, and I kept it minimal because I thought this was interesting. But obviously had to include Roger Ebert. Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times ranked the film number 1 on his top 10 list for 1992, describing it as, quote, one of the great screen biographies celebrating the sweep of an American life that bottomed out in prison before its hero reinvented himself, end quote. In 1999, so 7 years after the film came out, Ebert and Martin Scorsese, Scorsese was sitting in for Gene Siskel on his show, his TV show or whatever. They both ranked Malcolm X among the top 10 best films of the 90s. In comparison, Bell Hooks was much less favorable. In her essay, Spike Lee doing Malcolm X, denying black pain, Hooks argues that Lee's film, quote, does not compel viewers to confront, challenge, and change. It embraces and rewards passive response, inaction. It encourages us to weep, but not to fight, end quote, which I thought was interesting. Because so this is what I was talking about. They're like contemporary reviews of the film by black critics and stuff who were like, this, we're not fans of what the film was saying or doing necessarily. Also, at a similar time, African-American experimental filmmaker Robert Banks produced a mixed media film essay called X, the Baby Cinema, which was a 4.5-minute 16mm short film that chronicled the commercial appropriation of the image of Malcolm X, and which I think was another kind of criticism of the film, is that just the commercialization of Malcolm X as a figure. And apparently Spike Lee was not a big fan of this. Had some negative words to say about that short film. So I just thought that was interesting. But but broadly speaking, this film is very well reviewed. Contemporarily was very well reviewed broadly.
Yeah.
But there were some less favorable views, and I take Bell Hook's opinion very highly.
Yeah.
I saw that. I was like, oh, interesting. I was unaware of that, having watched this once in high school. So, as always, you can do us a favor by heading over to Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, Goodreads, any of those places. We'd love to hear what you have to say about the movies we watch, including Malcolm X next week. You can also help us out by heading over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you listen to our show. Obviously, subscribe, but write us a nice little review. That helps us get out to more people. And you can support us at patreon.com/thisfilmislit. If you support us at $15 a month, you get access to priority recommendation or priority requests, which this one was.
Yes, this was a request from Harpo Rat.
There you go. Thank you, Harpo Rat. Katie, where can people watch Malcolm X?
Well, as always, you can check with your local library, or if you still have a local video rental store, you can check with them. Otherwise, you can stream this with a subscription to HBO Max, YouTube, or MGM Plus, or you can rent it for between $4 and $6 from Fandango at Home, Apple TV, Prime Video, or YouTube.
There you go. I'm very excited to revisit this. We talked about in the last episode, or at the end of the last episode, that we've both seen this.
Yes.
You have not read it.
I'm reading it currently. Yeah. I had not read it, no.
Yeah.
But I did, yes. I watched this in high school.
Yeah.
In my world history class.
Yeah, I also, as we talked about, either watched it in my history class or the film class taught by the same history teacher, one of the two.
Yeah.
And as we both joked, the wokest teacher at our high school for both of us.
Shout out Mr. Weber.
Mr. Weiss, I believe, was the name of. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I think it was Mr. Weiss. He was this like hippie white dude.
Interestingly, mine was also a white man, ex-Marine.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
He was a cool guy.
Yeah.
I liked him a lot.
Yeah. Our Mr. Weiss was he was just kind of seemed like a generic like hippie, like not hippie, but like because he was pretty young.
Yeah.
But that kind of.
I honestly
clearly went to a liberal arts school and
still think sometimes about how much world history Mr. Weber managed to cram into that one year because it was a lot. He did a really good job.
Well, I think that a couple of those high school teachers I had around that time were very pivotal in making sure I've always been progressive and left leaning and all of that, but I was definitely at a very pivotal time in my life and a very formative time in my life that the people that I thought were the smartest and who were, I think, but who, at that time I thought were the most that I was looking up to intellectually were people like who were showing stuff like this, like that, and we're like, hey, we should watch Malcolm X and blah, blah. And, issues with the movies aside, which we'll discuss in whatever capacity we can as to young white people. But, I do give a lot of credit to my ongoing political development, but like the fact that I am the obnoxious leftist that I am now, a lot of it has to do with teachers like this showing us movies like this when I was in high school. So yeah. No, again, like I said, very excited to revisit it, see if my opinions have changed. I don't remember much of anything about it because, again, we watched it one time in high school.
Yeah.
I thought, wow, that was a really good movie that was, like, really powerful. I remember feeling very affected by it, but I don't remember anything about it.
Yeah, I remember, like, a couple things here and there, but not really. I remember, like, the discussions we had about the film more than I remember, like, the actual film.
Yeah.
Which I guess is good.
Yeah, yeah. So, next week we're talking about Malcolm X. Until that time, guys, gals, non-binary pals, and everybody else,
keep reading books,
keep watching movies,
and keep being awesome.